Hello world, I'm Jerome Bell, and this is Do Think, where free thinkers are free to think. And in this episode, I want to talk about free will. Now, the key to free will is understanding the definition of free will. Free will is the limited authority to influence one's reality. So the key concept is that free will is limited. It's the same way that a child has limited authority. Okay, for example, a child may be free to watch Nickelodeon, Disney Channel, Cartoon Network, but they can't watch HBO and Showtime. So there's some degree of choice, but there's not absolute choice. Okay, so that's what free will is. It is limited authority. Now, who determines what we can or cannot choose? The answer is God. God can choose to delegate limited authority to whomever he wishes. And that's the nature of our will. So what we can or can't do is determined by God. So there's two key principles to understand. Number one, God's authority is always honored by all existence. Number two, God chooses to delegate limited authority to each and every human being. So let's examine how that works. God has absolute authority over all existence. So when God views the future, he's not passively watching what happens independent of him. He is actually seeing the future that he wants to see. In other words, God chooses to see what he wants to see, and then therefore, that's what happens. And so basically, God can choose to see a world or a universe that reflects the will of each and every human individual. So he can pick and choose. And that is how God, though he knows everything, he doesn't passively know things. He actively knows things. And it is him choosing to see what he wants to see that determines what will actually be. So the future events of tomorrow, God can choose to consider the will of human individuals today, and he chooses to see a tomorrow that reflects the limited will of human beings today. Okay, so there is no contradiction there. God chooses the future that he wants to see, and he can take into consideration, he can choose to take into consideration our own will, and then he chooses to see a future that reflects our will, of course, along with God's. Now, of course, God exists outside of time. So how does that work? Well, yet again, the same principle. God chooses to see the universe that he desires to see. And not only can God choose what he sees, he can choose how he sees the universe in its entire timeline. So God sees the entire timeline of the universe. He can choose to see a universe timeline that reflects the limited free will of each and every individual. So there's no contradiction there. God can choose to see an entire universe timeline that reflects the limited free will of each and every individual. So folks, I think we do have free will. The question is, what do we do with it? I think every individual needs to learn to take ownership and responsibility over their actions. That alone, I think, will help produce a better world. That's what I think. What do you think? Post in the comments your thoughts. Any counter arguments out there? Let us know. Let's think together. Like this video if you enjoy what you see. And also, if you want to keep thinking together, subscribe. But until next time, do think.